And happy birthday! Yeah.
What up, punks? Can you hear me? I can't hear myself on these headphones, by the way.
You have the bum phones.
I got the bum phones.
You must have the bum phones again.
I'm going blind this week.
You're going blind. Oh, no. And you're... okay. All right.
I'm all discombobulated connect.
Come on,
Son of a gun.
Jeez. All right.
All right, we're back
I need
at
to get
it.
some more new headphones.
No, you're good. I should have brought mine,
howdy.
but
No,
I
it's all
didn't
good.
get home today yet.
We're out of sync. This is a weird schedule this
we're
week.
We're out of it.
It's out of whack.
All right. What up, punks? Welcome back to another episode of the Pop Culture Punks podcast.
Yeah.
I'm your host, Phil, and across from me is your boy,
Josh?
This week, we will be having probably a haphazard discussion about the gaming industry and games as a service, and not necessarily what we've talked about before with like microtransactions and Destiny and all that jazz, but more in what can we do other than just being mad about it and as consumers, and then kind of thinking through the dev cycle as far as all that jazz goes. Man, this is really throwing me off.
Jazz and more jazz and...
But before we get
jazz.
into all that and probably rant and rave, or maybe not, I don't know, we'll see. Maybe we're a little more level-headed. No.
It is a Thursday, after all.
It is a Thursday, yeah. It's not the weekend like usual.
It's not our usual happy, peppy Sunday morning selves, post-church selves. Today,
Post-church, yeah.
we're post-work selves.
Today, I
and
haven't even been home yet.
Neither.
So.
I literally walked in the door, and I put my backpack down, and then I saw that you texted me, and I was like, here we go.
Let's go. We're going
Let's go.
But before we get into that, what have you been up to this week?
All right. Very little, because it's Thursday, and usually I kind of sneak in all my pop culture stuff.
Sneak it in on the weekend, quick.
Yeah. I've been catching up on Punisher Season 2. So far, so good. There's more, I don't know, I'm enjoying where it's headed. There's more like Frank right away stuff, and Frank being Frank right away, whereas I felt like Season 1 was very long. I
think Season 2, the Frank stuff is really good, but it makes me realize how much I despise the Madani storylines.
Yes.
I like her. I like her as a character.
Right.
But I don't like her as a character in the show Punisher.
Yeah.
I think like those storylines are just pointless and like adds. It's like they're almost trying to just add drama for the sake of adding, like padding it out, which is Netflix is notorious for. But
yeah, and I don't understand that. Like that confuses me to no end. Is why they keep just buffering these things. Like just tell an interesting story. You've clearly set up this dynamic between Frank and this girl who I still don't know what her actual name is, but she's referred to as like 4 different things. Sarah, I think is. But like I feel like that's all Netflix does in all their shows. So part of me is like sad that all these superhero shows got canceled, but at the same time, like, dudes, you drag them out for forever for no reason. Like half the stuff in there, it's like I didn't need that to be that long. I did not need that hallway scene, like in the very first couple episodes where Jigsaw gets out of the hospital, like, which isn't even a spoiler. Like it's gonna happen. How's it? Oh, we're really walking all the way out. Like we're really doing this. It's just like, dudes, someone did not teach you how to cut stuff.
I'll be interested to see what. If Disney actually does decide to do it in like 4 years, if they can create something that is interesting. I hope they keep John Bernthal on the show
agree.
still.
I tweeted out, I want an animated Punisher show.
I saw that.
That's what I want.
I'd take an animated,
I want like one of those
animated Punisher.
Correct. Like I want one of those like edgy animation studios, like someone who does like the Adult Swim, like Toonami nighttime like stuff, like Afro Samurai.
Sort of
no, not like. I'm thinking more like Castlevania or like the Castlevania anime or
Isn't that on Netflix?
Yeah,
that was Netflix
that's
produced
really good. That's fantastic. Yeah. Talk about good storytelling. That is a great show. Highly recommend Castlevania the animated series. But I would love to see like a Punisher animated show. That would
Speaking
just be
of animated
cool.
shows, I was reminded sadly this week of the
Donald Glover Deadpool
thing. I was like, after watching Atlanta, I was like, man, I really
could you imagine
I feel like
what that would have been
awesome.
like? It would have been incredible.
Yeah.
I think
maybe someday he's gonna have something related to superheroes other than just cameo appearances.
Yeah,
because I would love to see him in something because he definitely seems to like that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm almost wondering if they would let him make a superhero or like. If they ever made like Legion into a bigger name in the universe, or they redid, because the FX show is great by all means. Like, not saying that they need to remake it as if it's poor quality, but I always enjoy other creators' takes on stuff, and I feel like with Donald Glover's chops, he would do a great job with a show like Legion or something like that. But anyway, so Punisher animated show, I would love it. Current show, season 2, pretty good. I'm excited where it's going. I love the Frank in the Woods, like shooting dudes, and him being like Frank Castle. Nuts. I'm jamming. Show wise as well, Attack on Titan season 3 part 2 just started last Sunday, and boy howdy,
dude! Now I got Game of Thrones and Attack on Titan on Sunday night. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's gonna be a wild ride. So this episode and like the title intro scene and everything is
they changed that up.
Yeah, dude, it's dope. Oh man, I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm freaking out. That's all I can tell you.
I know. I'm like crossing my fingers that we finally get some like, and I mean we have gotten some resolve for a lot of different things that we've been kind of waiting for 3 seasons.
But even in this one, it cracks open like a whole new can of worms.
I know, like they keep
frick, dude. Like,
and I mean that's kind of the classic anime. Like,
well, that's Attack on Titan to a T.
A shonen, but that's kind of like
the
formula for a lot of things like this. So.
Yeah, but I feel like this Attack on Titan, above a lot of the other animes that I've watched, loves to be like, all right, you've kind of figured out a good, okay, here's curveball number 20. And you're like, oh my gosh, I can't keep track.
They like resolve one thread and then just keep you going.
Which blasts open 20 more. But I'm
hoping we get in that basement.
Get in the freaking basement.
Figure out what the heck's
we'll
down
see.
There.
We'll see. I'm excited. So there's that. And then music-wise, I found on accident, I feel like this normally happens, but the Howard Jones, who I knew through his Killswitch Engage years.
Holy Diver!
Holy Diver! That was actually more like James Dio or whatever the frick his name is.
They did a cover of it, though.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
It is fantastic. But yeah, Howard Jones, who is not the 80s singer, but, well, he is the 80s singer, but he's also the Killswitch Engage frontman for a while Jesse Leach was gone, and he went from Killswitch to a new band called Devil You Know, which now apparently operates under the name Light the Torch.
Same band?
Same band, minus one guy, which is I think why they changed the name.
Oh, okay.
So it was like some legal things, or technically he could own rights because he was like a founding member or something. So they just outright changed the name on Spotify of like all the title stuff, because I was looking back and I was like, oh, this sounds like Howard Jones. Is he on a new project? Googled it. No, they the guy left,
changed
so
the
they
name.
Changed the name. So that's that. Yeah, so really digging it. I can't remember what the album is called. It might just be the title album. But I have always been a Howard Jones fan. He's one of my favorite metalcore vocalists, I would say. I love his clean vocals. And then the album is Revival, Light the Torch. Revival.
Cool.
Howard Jones! He's got kind of that like operatic, I think I've used that word a number of times, but it's very unique. He's one of those vocalists where I like him because if you were to play me 20 songs of random artists, I could probably him,
pick out his vocals.
David Draymond, Ben Burnley, Ivan Moody, Howard Jones, maybe Chris Motionless. Like there's a handful in there that if you played a song and like
you
in a
could tell
giant
which
group, I could
voice
tell
is theirs.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't have like,
especially like right now. I feel like there's kind of a muddle.
Voice.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of groups out there who are kind of sounding the same, but
sure.
he's not one of them. So anyway, that's all I got.
Cool.
I see number 1 is Veep.
Yeah, I've been trying to get used to the commute and everything, and
sure.
This week is the whole conference. I don't want to talk about work on here, but this week is the whole conference thing and the commute, and it's been crazy, so I haven't really been doing anything productive.
Sure.
Which I finally got back to writing today, but the past 3 or 4 days I've just been recovering from my body being dead after moving.
I was sore. I was super sore.
And then the next day at work I had like a coffee thing where I had to lift these like 20-30 pound carafes all like for 2 hours. So I've been watching a lot more TV, and I picked up watching Veep again on HBO.
Nice.
I've been binge watching it.
The premise? I don't know if it sounds super familiar, but
it's Julia Louis-Dreyfus's show, Elaine from Seinfeld.
Okay.
And
she's like the vice president.
She's
right?
the main character.
Yes.
And she's the vice president. That's why it's called Veep. And it's basically about her being the vice president, and it's like a comedy sitcom sort of thing.
Gotcha.
It's pretty good. I think it's really funny in a lot of moments, and I like a lot of the characters. It's got like it's not quite like Seinfeld. It's more reminiscent of like Larry David, like his Curb Your Enthusiasm show. Not necessarily, but some parts, like it has a similar sort of humor bent to it. But it's definitely they curse a lot in that show. Like it's just the F word like every 2 seconds. Like you can tell why it's on HBO.
Right. Hey man, it's the president's Oval Office.
Yeah.
Anything goes.
So it's a pretty good show. I don't know if it's trying to be like accurate or like how politically accurate it is, but there's a lot of funny moments and like just a lot of goofy political stuff that happens, and like she's just always getting to help. It's basically like an HBO version of Parks and Rec, kind of like a lot more intense. Like the show is super fast paced. Like the first 3 episodes or first 4 episodes, you're just like, what is going? Like she's like here, and then all of a sudden she's like 50,000 steps away in the next 2 episodes. So, but it's really funny, and I'd recommend it for anybody who enjoys comedies. So
definitely.
And then the only other thing is, again, with the commute, I've been listening to audiobooks just to get my reading, just to be productive on my commute, because it's like 30 to 40 minutes depending. And for my nonfiction book, I've been listening to the Teddy Roosevelt biography by Edmund Morris, and it's super interesting so far. I don't know how he was as motivated as he was, because like the things he did even when he was a kid was just insane. So it's a 3-part series of like huge books. They can't see what I'm doing, but they're
huge.
like giant books,
big books.
And I think I'm only on like up to his like sophomore year in college, and he's done more than I've done in my entire life so far.
That's why he's president.
Like he was like 7 years old, and he was writing like daily diaries and like catching animals and like documenting their biology and like all this insane stuff. I'm like, this dude was like somehow this highly motivated, and like you can see why he became president, because like you kind of have to be that kind of person. But yeah, it's super fascinating, and I'm getting some ideas for like stories based on him. I want to do some like sci-fi stuff with a character based on his
Teddy Roosevelt story. 2020.
Yeah. The comic book.
Yeah, that'd be dope. I'd read that.
Except it's not even futuristic anymore, because that's next year.
I know, right? I feel like that's the joke, is now everything is like that thing. It's just 2020 or like 2099.
Yeah.
Roosevelt 2099.
So it's actually really good. I'd recommend it for anybody who's mildly interested in Teddy Roosevelt.
Well, this is a side question for you in terms of just audiobooks in general, because I'm a huge podcast person, but I have been interested in potentially doing audiobooks because I like the listening thing. However, especially with something like fiction, I think I almost feel like I couldn't do it, because it would just weird me out having one person read the same thing. Whereas like, depending
on what books you get, because I've only done like Brandon Sanderson stuff, and his like person is super good. Like he does like voices for every specific character and like accents and all this stuff. Like it's almost like a stage play in a sense.
Sure.
So it kind of depends on who the voice actor is, and you'd probably have to do some research.
Yeah.
But the Teddy Roosevelt one's really good. Like he's got different accents for the narration versus like dialogue and stuff. But yeah, it's probably hit or miss depending on what fiction you do.
Sure.
But I'm also listening to the first Game of Thrones, and that's been fine so far.
Cool.
And I've listened to it at like a 1.5 speed too, so it's a little bit faster, just because audiobooks are naturally slower. But yeah, it kind of depends on how you process information.
Sure.
For me, it makes the commute seem really short for some reason, because I just like get super engrossed in the book while still being able to drive, which is nice.
Yeah.
And I think I was thinking about doing podcasts as well, but like I have specific goals that I want to like do every day, and the only time I could get like the reading done that I want to do every day was I'd have to do audiobooks. Otherwise, like there's not enough time in the day. So, but I'd highly recommend trying it.
Sure.
You can sign up for. I don't know if you've never signed up for Audible before. I think you can get like a 30-day trial or something, and then you can. And I think they'll give you like 3 free audiobooks.
Nice.
Because audiobooks are not very cheap. But yeah, they'll give you like 3 free, and then it's like $15 a month, and you get 1 free per month. So it doesn't sound cheap, but audiobooks are like $30 to $40 because they're so costly to make.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But the library also has it, so you could utilize that. And so
yeah, right on.
That's my spiel for audiobooks.
Audible, want to sponsor? Just throwing it out there into the ether.
Maybe someday.
We'll see. Maybe someday. Well,
so yeah, that's my deets for this week.
Cool. We're we're going to have quite the discussion on our hands because we're speaking, I think, from a very interesting perspective on the topic of the game industry and just kind of the creative industry as a whole, because we're aspiring professional creators, more amateur, like doing things for ourselves, kind of having fun with it, while also being big consumers of games and all these things. And so for us, we're kind of speaking on this topic of like, what the frick is happening in the game industry and the creative industry, not necessarily as in, well, I know the inner workings of higher finance and, and trends and things like that, but just looking at some of the general reaction that seems to be coming from consumers and why it seems to be getting worse, or just like not changing at all, which I think is equally as troubling, at least in some respects. I think in some respects it is changing, but...
Yeah, I think my initial thoughts, because there's a lot of stuff going on right now between different... Like, gamers right now just seem like just ticked off about everything. And sometimes it's warranted and sometimes it's not. I'm not really the kind of person who tends to get like ticked off about things like that, because I mean, that's part of why we did this podcast, because we're just like, let's have fun and not be mad about everything.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think there is something happening in the games industry where like, what is the primary motivator for a lot of the things that are happening?
Yeah.
Especially like microtransactions and DLC and basically like games as a service models, and like, how is that working? Is it to get more money for them to do more creative things and produce more content, or is it just to get money and doesn't even go to the devs, that goes to like the publisher or whatever? Right. And it's kind of basically like, is it becoming handheld games where it's kind of just a money grab most of the time, or is it trying to become more like a PC MMO style thing where like the primary motivator isn't necessarily just to get money out of greed, it's more to get money to make more content, as a longer service goes on.
Sure.
But I think nothing like that has been done super successfully yet on console games.
Yeah,
and I don't think developers, publishers, or gamers like being general specifically, because there's a wide range of people who have differing opinions. But I don't think like the people who are mad really like know what they want, because you see some people who say no DLC, no microtransactions, everything has to just be on the disc, like God of War basically. And then some people are like, well, cosmetics are fine, or there's kind of like different tiers of what is and isn't okay, and it's kind of like this tumultuous thing right now where what people want and what the people are producing is kind of out of sync in some ways.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my initial thought going into this,
for sure,
if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. Because so the big idea behind doing this discussion was, and we're a couple weeks late, but I think it was partially just to process and make sure we were coming at this with a perspective that was actually worth putting down in an hour-long conversation. But the big thing was is it Jason Schreier? Jason Schreier's article on the dev cycle and what it's like to produce for a game, and just the absolute craziness that happened during Anthem's production, how it was all over the place. The devs had no idea what they were making, and the anxiety and depression that was riddled through that office and that was documented, and just hearing like the details that he had in his article were baffling, literally, frankly, in just terms of, and not even just like video games, but just in a professional industry where there is a good amount of money on the line. It was incredible how much dysfunction existed in that space. And so I think thinking through that deeper, you and I both kind of had the thought of like, well, maybe this is worth talking about, because I feel like, and so this was kind of my perspective coming into this, is it's not really to say like, well, is DLC good or bad, or well, is microtransactions, what actually is a microtransaction, which one is good, but more just looking at the fact of like, what is the core issue of what's going on? Because to me, it's a balance of companies need money to function and to make new stuff, to your point. It's not all just greed, but why does it feel like that? Like, what is communicating to us as consumers as greed? Because there might be someone who, I'm sure there's someone out there who saw the Spider-Man DLC for the PS4 game, was like, oh, you can put that on the disc? That's not good, whatever. And it's like, for me, I didn't bat an eye. Why? Because one, I love the game and I got a full-fledged 20-something hour experience out of it.
Yeah,
so
I mean, I
for them
like
to
40
add
hours of that game.
right. So to have extra content on top of that, that's icing on the cake. And if I want it, I can have it. If I don't, I let it go.
Yeah.
And so why is that bad for some people, good for others? Something like recently today, Randy Pitchford, who works at Gearbox, has been under fire just under like the yeah, exactly. Like CEOs kind of coming under fire of their qualification of like quote unquote what a microtransaction is, and him specifically with cosmetics. It was like, well, there's no microtransactions in Borderlands, but you can buy skins, and everyone was like, that's a microtransaction, like everyone flipping their lids because like that's the thing. And again, not to say that necessarily is like bad or wrong or that they can't be upset about that, but like what is leading developers to put these elements in their games, and why has it become destructive, and how have we potentially as consumers fed that, and how do we need to fix it instead of just kind of pissing and moaning online? Because I feel like that's all it is right now, and there's got to be like more a better active way.
I mean, I think there's different levels within the industry that it seems of. And I think the Anthem case specifically reveals the negative side of things, and it kind of confirmed a lot of people's worst fears about what EA's role is in all of this stuff. And maybe even Activision with their split, with Bungie and Activision split. Right. Kind of revealing like the overbearing power that these publishers have on developers, and almost like creative control or like creative restriction. Because in the Anthem case, I think how long were they developing that?
It was for like 6 or 7 years. Yeah.
And I think in the article it said like they didn't even have the name for the game until E3 2017, when somebody was just like, we're calling this Anthem. Or like they had a different name and then somebody just like told them, we're calling this Anthem now. Right. And it was kind of like reading that article, it was just like, what the heck? How does this even happen? Like, this is insane. And then even I think it was the second article that came out after that, but he went into the Dragon Age 4 as well, and how like after Inquisition they were kind of going back to developing like a more Origin style Dragon Age, where it was like more single player focused and more like co-op, like couch co-op focused, where you could have your buddies play with you, and like more RPG single player elements and stuff. And then basically EA came in and said like, no, we want all of our games to be live service. And I think it was like after 2 years, and they had to like completely shift gears again. And now Dragon Age 4 is basically confirmed to be like a live service single player game, which is like, what does that even mean? That doesn't make sense. Yeah, like, and based on what happened with Anthem, I don't think it's going to be pretty. No, I don't think Bioware has the engine, like the Frostbite engine and all that stuff, to do what it needs to be done. And I think, while money might be an issue, I think a lot of these companies don't have the infrastructure to create these types of games. Right. Well, because and I think that's why we're seeing so many fail, is not because they're haphazard, which a lot of them are, but I think they're haphazard because they don't have the proper technology to implement these systems well. Sure. And we're finally starting to see it a little bit with Division 2 like being successful, but yeah, I don't know.
Well, and to your point, and to me, I think my bigger concern isn't necessarily even the technical side. I think that's a big part of it, is because that has to be. If you're making a giant project that needs to continue living, you need a team to be able to manage that. But if you keep sending your team all across the border, they're expected to do, 60 to 70 hour weeks on average. Speaking from a human perspective, not even like, obviously businesses and business owners don't want to hear that. Like, that's, to them, that's the last thing that they're concerned about. Yeah. But there's a reality that if you keep treating your people like this, one, they're going to leave. And I've heard that droves of people, it sounded like, or they've laid off a whole bunch of people. So one, you're going to kick a whole bunch of people out the door who are trying to keep your quote unquote live service game alive. But if they're not there to even do it,
the two Anthem creative directors to a different project now.
So it's like, so who's even running that team then to even help them on to maintain the vision that one of those two creative directors came in and saved to even make the game semi-playable by the time it launched. So that's one thing. The other thing too is, I think what comes across as greed, I think more than just trying to support your game, is when the EA CEOs are getting bonuses every year, but then they're chopping their head count in the dev department by like 100, 200 people. And to me, there's just certain business things as from a consumer perspective. It's like, I don't know that I want to buy an EA game ever again. And I probably will, just because their name is attached to everything, and it's kind of hard to do that. And that's kind of, to me, that's one of the things that I'm trying to wrestle with is, everyone's saying speak with your wallet, but at what point does your dollar still end up in their pocket somehow far down the line?
Yeah, and the irony of the EA thing is like, for some reason they're on this weird train of like all of our games need to have some sort of live service element, but then this Respawn Star Wars game gets announced, and it's like a single player. The main selling point is this is a single player game. There are no microtransactions, no loot boxes, no like. We're just like, wait, what is happening right now? Like,
right.
Yeah, you're really confusing all of us.
Right. Well, but that's what's fascinating to me though is that is the same made by the same crew who's made Titanfall and now Apex Legends, which is huge. And from what it sounds like, and they've been very vocal saying they did not let EA touch this game. Yeah. And to me that's fascinating because I think it also does have like loot boxes and stuff like that. But even from the little that I played,
Apex absolutely does.
But even from the little bit that I played, not necessary. Like, not even realize cosmetic. It's just cosmetic. It's like and Fortnite. To me, in that respect, it's like if you really love the game and you're one of those people who plays that game and that game alone for 40 hours a week and you give them $20-$30, like, good. In my mind, that's good because you just downloaded it. We all downloaded it for free. That game was not free to make. And I think that's the weird thing that when people get freaky about microtransactions and stuff that I don't quite understand, speaking from someone who like works in marketing and business and stuff, it's like stuff costs stuff to make. And a lot of times it costs a stupid amount of money. Now, when it gets manipulative, like the whole Battlefront 2 fiasco, which again, there's a train running along here that it's the same company who keeps doing this, but the Battlefront 2 fiasco, when that first came out and like loot boxes that you could buy that literally won the match, like, what?
Yeah.
Like that's not even a game anymore. That's just gambling for digital
and I think
stats.
It goes back to the tumultuous state of things because it doesn't seem like they fully get it yet. Like they don't understand a good model. Either that or they're just willfully ignorant about what a good model is.
For live service specifically.
Yeah, and maybe that is us not speaking with our wallets. Because like if you look at, I hate to keep beating this dead horse, but if you look at the Destiny 2 model, like you pay $60 for the base game, then you buy like 2 season passes, I think, plus like the mid-tier, whatever those DLC were called. Like I feel like you end up paying like hundreds of dollars just to play the game, and then on top of that, they also like sell microtransactions and stuff. Versus Apex Legends, it's a free game, and then in that instance, people are more willing to actually be forgiving, which if you look at people's response to those two games, people are a lot more forgiving of a game like Apex. Like you don't see a lot of people complaining about microtransactions in a game like Fortnite or Apex.
Right.
Because the game's free. You're not paying for it. And so like
it's
you
not
said,
necessary for the game in a sense.
Yeah,
or
it's not necessary to play the game. Like it's not like a game like Borderlands where like it's kind of like in these single player games, you used to be able to unlock cool things and like do missions to get this dope weapon, and now if you put microtransactions in it, it's like it kind of cheapens like those certain things. Whereas in these free multiplayer games, like the skins aren't really a part of the gameplay experience. The skins just make you look cool for your friends when you're playing this game.
Right.
And like it makes sense to spend $60. Like if I get a game for free, then I have $60 I didn't spend on a game that I can give these developers to say, hey, you made a good game.
Yeah.
And just, I don't like Fortnite or I don't like Apex, but that doesn't mean it's not a product worth paying for because a game in Apex's instance, they show that they can make a quality game.
Right.
And they've done it before with Titanfall. So
yeah.
And that was an instance of EA not having their hand involved in anything that it's kind of a weird situation because everybody was expecting Titanfall 3 and instead we got a Battle Royale game. And people were like, oh, EA ruining another dev. And they're like, no, this was actually our idea. Like, we wanted to do this. and then they did it really well.
They made one of the arguably better ones.
Yeah,
and now it's,
and I mean, it's
top
definitely
of the dogs.
not as successful as Fortnite is, and it's kind of dipping. But
it's also newer.
But it's still found its niche.
Yeah.
And like, there's people who like that sort of thing. So
Definitely.
It's kind of, it's a weird industry that I don't think gets the model yet, because everybody's doing a different model. Like some people are doing, okay, you pay for the main game and then all DLC is free and it's funded by microtransactions. And in my mind, okay, that's fine. But then it's like you have to rely on the DLC actually being worth your money. Because when you look at Fallout 76, most of the DLC they've been releasing is like, I don't know if that's actually worth the trade-off, sort of. So
for sure.
Yeah.
So to rewind it back a little bit to kind of define better what what we would classify as a live service game. So it's essentially God of War is not a live service game. You bought the game for $60, you sit down, you play it. There might be DLC that they add in that you can buy, but other than that, the game is an isolated thing.
Yeah, once you beat the game is done.
The game is done. Whereas, for example, Destiny, there's expansions, there's new raids, there's new bosses. The game is changing constantly. There's new guns coming in, there's new armor, there's events.
Yep.
Division 2, same thing. Apex, there's new characters coming in. I would say Overwatch is like the same thing. There's new characters. They're making new modes.
Yep.
It's a game that evolves and continues. So that's kind of defining live service. So it's not to say like just because a game has DLC that it is a live service game. Like I think that's just added on. It's like a bonus thing.
And I don't think
in some instances.
Like it's hard because I've never considered a game like Call of Duty, at least before this whole loot box thing.
Right,
happened.
like pre-loot box era.
But even then, like somehow Call of Duty still sustained their business model. Even I guess they pump a new one out every year, so they don't really have to.
Right.
They don't have to have one game that continues for multiple years because they just make a new one every year. So maybe in that sense, it's live service because of that.
Well, I don't know, but that's an interesting point because so the thing again that's kind of underwriting my thought process with this is there are some games like why is it so hard for these companies to do something? And one, because they're not in our best interest, they're in their own interest because they have to make money. Don't fault them for that.
Yep.
But it just is almost amazing how a company, again, like EA, can give their CEOs bonuses, then cut a bunch of their team, then put out crappy games that no one wants to buy, then kill them, then put the people who are working on those games on different things. And there's all these things where it's like, I feel like if we're going to look at nightmare scenarios, EA is as nightmare as it gets, like to the point where I literally don't know that I want to buy anything from them. But you kind of go on the other side and you see something, for example, like I don't really have a good example of like a DLC game, like a live service I like, but we'll use Division 2 just as not to say that it's the beacon, but it's closer. I think it's getting closer. So one example is you pay $60, you get the base game. All DLC is free. All raids are free. All additional content coming down the pipes is free. You can still buy cosmetics and stuff, I believe.
Which basically pays for...
Right, which is it is what it is. Like, doesn't affect the game. It's not like you're paying $100 for a gun that does like a bajillion damage or something. It doesn't
basically
break
somebody
anything.
else is paying for your DLC. Assuming you don't buy any microtransactions, somebody else is paying for your DLC.
Right.
In a sense.
Right. And I feel like even saying that, there are people who hate that, which I understand. But my argument would be that, just lightly arguing for it, there is a level where these people need to make money because the whole reason that you're playing this game at all is because they made the money to do it.
Yeah.
And that had to come from somewhere. It doesn't just print, and so they have to earn it.
I think, again, I think that confusion, for some reason, is spawning out of this idea that all games need to be the same. And I think we're coming out of an era like where online games were a different thing than single-player games. But now it's not just online games and single player games. It's like this weird
single player games. It's semi.
Yeah, like online games aren't really the same online games as they were. Like these games need to. They're trying to create a model where they don't have to make the same game every year. They can make the game once and have it last 3 or 4 years. And I think for that to be successful, they need to figure out a way to monetize it. And I think it seems that when like the developer gets to decide how that happens, it tends to go better.
Right.
And it seems like when the publisher has their hands in it,
just goes
they don't
awry.
really get how things work, and they're just trying to like get the dollar basically, which is the point of business in a sense. But at the same time, it kind of comes off as greedy.
Yeah. Well, and that's, to me, that's what I would love to know about what the financial state of those companies looks like, or what the cost is for everything. Because part of me is like, how on earth is a company like CD Projekt Red not bankrupt? Because they're proving that you can do it. Did they just make all their sales in The Witcher 3 and they just have better financial teams? And so they were like, yeah, no, we're not going to spend a bajillion dollars to make this really crappy game that we know isn't going to sell well. And so they make The Witcher 3, comes out, sells like hotcakes, makes buku dollars, and now they're just sitting pretty on it, and they're like, all right, and we got Cyberpunk 2077 coming.
And then they're going to take another 8 years to make another game.
Exactly. And then it's going to come out, and it's going to drop, and it's going to fund the next 8 years. And so, and I do know, and I say that with the big caveat that I do know that the Polish government gave them a fairly sizable stipend.
Sure, but I mean, other studios do it. God of War took 5 years to make, and there's no DLC or anything for that game.
Right.
And somehow...
Well, more to say that, like, they got a big boost financially to keep the doors open, probably, and to work on all these projects from the Polish government to make it. So it wasn't just like they made $15 trillion, being exaggerative for effect, but it wasn't like they made a stupid amount of money and then just rationed it wisely over these years, knowing that they were going to make it. But there is a level to me of like, why are these businesses having to turn out these crazy figures to like even make this stuff? Because to me, so, and this is all kind of coming down to the point that you said, because it kind of clicked for a second of like, did we move from like a very weird sphere? Like, was Call of Duty the reason that we're now in this phase of gaming specifically? And not even Call of Duty, but also like Ubisoft as well. Like, I feel like Assassin's Creed and Call of Duty, when you look at it critically, it almost seems like they're kind of the cause of this idea of like, well, we don't want to just turn out a game every year and get that money, because I feel like that's almost the equivalent in a weird way. Is before you were making one game and then you just had that franchise and you made the next one every single year, and there was very little difference. They were almost borderline the same. Half the time it was just a reskinning and maybe some new settings and stuff. But I mean, that
still happens, kind of.
It does.
Assassin's Creed shifted their tune to more RPG-esque.
Well, and now they're doing it every 2 years for their cycle.
Makes a game every year.
Right.
So that hasn't really changed.
Right. But
I'm curious if the model more so began with PUBG introducing the Battle Royale mode, which is... I don't know if PUBG's free, but I don't think it's very expensive.
Not. Yeah.
But like, I feel like games like that kind of popularized this model, and as well as Destiny 1. Mm-hmm. I feel like Destiny was the first time like I don't know what to call it, like an MMORPG type game tried to be on a console in a sense. Like in an epic scale.
In a dedicated sense.
Yeah.
Because I mean, and it's
because Call of Duty, I don't even remember which was the first game that actually introduced microtransactions into Call of Duty, but I feel like Destiny might have done it first. But I don't know enough to actually stake a claim.
Well, I don't even know that Destiny had it for a while. Like, I want to say it was towards the end of its life cycle that they started adding the silver or whatever and the emotes and all the other nonsense that you could get. But,
well, and I think you're making a good point with the repeated games every year, because I think in the case of Ubisoft, they basically realized like, this model is not sustainable because people are getting burnt out and don't want to buy our games anymore.
Exactly.
Which I think points to a bigger issue that some companies are realizing, like CD Projekt Red knows already, is that like people will give you money in droves if you create a good game.
Yeah, exactly.
Like good games will be bought by everybody. Like, people still buy The Witcher 3. People still buy the DLC and all that stuff.
Look at what that did.
Red Dead.
Like,
and I think like the reason companies like that, and I mean Red Dead, the online is, I don't know how that's doing right now, but they're completely funded by GTA 5 or online.
Oh, so yeah. But
they've got plenty of money.
Right, but even that aside, even like GTA 5 is, or the GTA 5 is...
Shark cards might be the first.
Freaking shark cards.
Somehow nobody ever complains about GTA 5's monetization.
Whatever.
And it's like probably the worst, type of monetization out there.
But I mean, even those games aside, like, again, though GTA 5 and Red Dead 2 themselves, just for the single player game, sold stupid. Like, and you're talking about people, to your point, that people who probably wouldn't consider themselves hardcore gamers. Like you and I, like we'll know obscure games that no one's ever heard of, and like we play them consistently and things like that. But there are other people out there who it's like, I bought a PS4 to play Red Dead. Like I have a coworker who's like, I really want to play Red Dead. I'm buying a PS4, or like I want to play Spider-Man. I want to play God of War. There's like, to your point, good games sell stupid. So why is it so hard then to maybe just take the time and invest it? But then the answer kind of reveals itself as, well, it seems like they're in a financial panic every year and that they're not making enough money. But then you're giving all this money to all these CEOs and stuff. Like, I don't get that. Like, there's just something that doesn't compute there. And it's free market, and it's not to say like, oh, rich people shouldn't be making money.
Rage against the machine.
But it's more just questioning like, like,
yeah,
what actually is making you money, and is giving that guy an extra $2 million a year. Like, to me, that probably funds a whole team to make another game. Like, for real. If you're paying them $50,000 a year, if you're being generous and reading some of the stats on the average of like what some of these game devs make for the amount of hours they work.
Yeah.
Like, let's say they're all making $50,000. Like, that funds a small team or a decently sized team to potentially make an even more incredible franchise that is going to sell even more stupid if it's good. So, like, why are you investing in your higher levels who basically are just saying, like, put more skins in it, put this? And again, speaking from ignorance, like, I'm not in these boardrooms, like, I'm not speaking, but there's these patterns that keep popping up where it's like, why do these companies always seem in a financial panic?
Yeah.
Like that's the vibe that seems to come across. They're always freaking out.
I think there's a discord between it goes back to the wallet thing. I think there's a discord between what we're saying and what we're doing with our money. Because I think, like, they make plenty of money in microtransaction sales, I feel like, where they don't even need to care, in a sense.
Yeah.
And so there's like two different models where, like, you put out a crappy game, but somehow people still spend money on microtransactions. So it's like doing well enough. And I think Anthem was probably the first time where, like, that didn't work. People were like, no, this game is just broken. Like, it's not even worth buying microtransactions in. But like a game like Destiny kind of like comes out and it's like, there's some stuff to do, but it's a little bit lackluster, and people still enjoy it. And then finally, by the end of its life cycle, it's like a more fleshed out experience. And I think a lot of that is because of microtransactions, and it's kind of like the dip where, like, they're struggling to keep going, and people kind of fund the experience with microtransactions. And then I think a lot of it comes down to fear that quality is going to drop because of this. Like, it's kind of like, if I can release half a game and then release some of it in DLC later and get away with it, then why wouldn't I? And it kind of seems like that's what the mindset these publishers are in, like Activision and EA especially. And I think that's what a lot of gamers are afraid of.
Yeah.
And even if they don't know it, I think it's the fear that games are being cheapened because of this weird monetization policy.
And I think they are. And I think there's strong evidence that this is not a subjective freak out by game fans. I think I look at Final Fantasy 15. That is a single player game, and they're still making content for it. And some of it, I believe, is paid, I want to say, but I don't want to speak out of turn. So, but that's one of those things where it's like, just make the game and release it when it's ready, or like do these things. But again, the core of why they do rush it, or they do push it out, or they do these things is because we need the money now. And my question to the publisher or to the big studio is like, but why? Like, why do you need that money now? Because to me, I look at what Ubisoft is reaping by like doing Assassin's Creed every other year instead of every single year. I look at what they're reaping because they said Division 2, completely different than Division 1, relatively, in terms of how we're going to monetize and what content is going to look like.
Or more akin to Division 1 after everything
exactly.
was improved.
And like they're picking up farther ahead down the line, where some of these other companies, like Anthem, is like 20 years behind. Like, it's just busted.
Yeah, they just took all the worst parts of these games
and they
put it in a terrible
video
game engine, and then
figured it would work somehow.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, the reason they did that is because EA's beaten down BioWare's door, like, make us our money. And like, I just don't know where all your money as a publisher is going. If, I'm sure some of it's going into stupid amounts of marketing, even though your thing is crap. And like, to me, that just raises questions of like, are you even investing in something that you should be, you know? And to a level, like, good stuff sells it. I don't know.
I mean, I feel like at least EA has proven to us through their actions that they really don't care about good games. I think like the amount of studios that they've shut down just because one game doesn't perform well, like Dead Space, that studio, Visceral, I think they're called. Yeah. And there's like a whole list of studios they've shut down after like a game not performing well or something. It shows that they're not interested in playing the long game. And like,
right.
And I think even like Dead Space 3, like I think that game didn't do well because of them. Like, it's kind of like EA's like comes in, meddles, game doesn't do well because they meddled, and then they blame it on the gamers and say, you just don't like first-person experiences. And we're like, no, we just don't like the crap that you're churning out, basically. Right. Like, we want the creative directors and the developers and the people who get how to make good games creating these games, and not your grubby little fingers.
Right.
Like, basically, like, they come in, they destroy the single-player game. We don't want to buy it, so we don't buy it. Basically, we speak with our wallet, and the message they hear is that we don't like single-player games, not we don't like the crap that you're turning out.
Right.
And so they make even worse games that are live service games, and it's kind of like, and I think we've talked about this before, but I don't think they get what gamers want, really.
Yeah.
And part of that is probably because we're like, people are just screaming and shouting online, and we just look nonsensical to them.
Yeah.
And they're like,
that's a good point.
It's easy to shut people down who just look nonsensical because like, oh, they're just crying and whiny. But I think like what's happening with our money, they're misinterpreting what we're saying. We're not saying we don't want good single player games. We're saying we want good single player games. You're just making bad ones.
Yeah.
Because like you look at all of the PS4 game sales, and like Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War, PS4, all of those games were in contenders in their respective years as Game of the Year and top sales, and the PS4 is pushing 100 million units sold, probably because of their exclusive content. And so
majoritively which are single player exclusive content.
And so it's weird. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point, though, to also point fingers at us as the consumer, because it was Craig K. I don't remember his last name, but I said Craig K., who we met at Hellbox, who chimed in on when we were kind of planning this episode. And he threw out the point that, like, it's weird because as consumers, there's this very strange thing that happens where people will freak out, and their freak out isn't really based on objective facts about why the game is bad. It's just their unmet expectations.
Yeah, like, I'm mad and I don't know why.
Exactly. Or it's like, I just expected it to be better or something. And it's like, but like what? You know? And I appreciated his point, because there is a level where I don't think it's the issue. And I've seen this argument too. Well, publishers need to listen to us. Y'all are babbling like dummies. Like, I don't understand what they're supposed to listen to. Like, you're not saying anything helpful. When people are telling the Anthem folks, like, yeah, where are these guns? Like, where are these things? Like, that is objective feedback. Like, your game is trash, fix it. Versus, you know, I think of like, part of me, even with the Mass Effect 3 endings, like, I know that caused a whole uproar, and I am very much in the minority who thought they were fine. But that was one of those where it was like, what did you expect? Like what did these not meet? Or like, what part of this content did you just like completely ruined your whole experience? Or like, just like what was it? Was it objectively bad?
Yeah, there's a difference between not liking something and something actually being like broken.
Right.
And I think with a lot of games now, it's become this weird narrative where a game comes out and everybody's playing it and it's popular, and then everybody realizes it's crap, and then they stop playing it. But then there's the people who are still playing it, and then it becomes this weird argument between people who enjoy it still and then people who think it's crap, and then it's just like this weird argument, and they're like, why can't I just enjoy things? Why can't you just let me play this game? Like, you can enjoy it, but like,
it's crap.
But they're like, we can point out things about how like there's terrible drops, there's terrible loot, there's bad mechanics, half of the raids don't work, there's loading screens up the wazoo, and it's kind of like, at what point can you actually say something is like objectively bad, but you can still enjoy it? And it's kind of like, how do you get that message up to the publishers?
Right.
Because like, there's the only people who really hear it are the developers, who are like I don't know. Like,
I don't know.
This is the game we made. Like and a lot of the times it's probably them enforcing deadlines on them. And
right.
Like, I work in software development. I know how all that stuff goes, but it's probably exasperated for what I'm experiencing because I don't work the amount of hours they work for the crap pay they get. So.
Right. Well, and that's a good point too, that I wonder if that's also partially to blame is the diehard fans who can't, and I think specifically with games, I think there's a difference between, you know, like liking a bad movie and knowing it's bad and still liking it, because that thing is like you pay for it or you rent it and it's done. Whereas with a lot of these live service games that people are like quote unquote diehard fans of, they're still funding it. And so I think that in a weird way it justifies publishers and devs to not heed the warnings of the people who are in the majority saying like your game is awful. And it's like, well, it doesn't really matter because we're getting $100 a piece for these like 200,000 players who are still paying for it. So like, bunk to you. I don't care, you know. And I think at that level,
I think that loyalty doesn't last though. The reason like Fortnite is successful as it is because the developers have shown, and I mean, there's a couple articles that we need to get into, but like they've shown that they're willing to put out content and all that stuff, maybe at the detriment of developers' or sanity,
health and
health, But like people like that, where like they're willing to continue coming back to it because they're putting out content. Whereas like with Anthem, I think they're probably bleeding people every month, who keep giving up because it's like, okay, there's no really. Like, I think they've abandoned their roadmap, basically, and it's been, like, radio silent for a while. Like, it's kind of just on Band-Aid mode right now.
Yep.
So.
Well, and I don't know if you did read that article about the dwindling player base, but that, even how the game was designed, is causing issues because now the way the gear and the percentages is set up, that you have to play some of the higher, like, you know, Grandmaster 3s and stuff with other people. Like, it's almost impossible to play solo. But because the amount of people who are at that tier who can compete is so few that
matchmaking
people can't even
work.
do that. Like, so matchmaking isn't working. And then at that level, that Grandmaster 3 dungeon or whatever isn't even as rewarding as doing like a Grandmaster 1 15 times. And with how long the 3 takes and with what you get out of it, which is the newest content, apparently, from what I read, it doesn't even pay to do it. It's easier to just sit in the easier one and pump that out for an hour versus doing the other one. You know, do the easier one 15 times versus the other one time.
I think we're going to have a lot of games like this going forward that are kind of like martyrs for specific causes that we've been trying to point out in the game industry, and they're not listening because first we had Battlefront where people went absolutely ballistic, justifiably, because this online game decided to introduce microtransactions that could affect your actual gameplay.
Right.
People were like, "This is unacceptable."
Yeah.
And they got rid of them eventually, and I've heard the game is actually better now, but I don't care.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
And then this game comes out, and it basically shows, again, confirms gamers' fears about the quality of games that will start coming out with this sort of financial model.
Right.
And I think like this game is just another peg on that hole of like showing these publishers like eventually we're going to be like, this is not acceptable. Like and I think with Anthem, people finally did put their foot down and said like, no, this is trash. And even people who like YouTubers and stuff who rap loot shooters like religiously, like they're just like, no, this game is garbage. Like I'd rather play Division that comes out in a month, basically. And I think we're going to keep seeing games like this that are kind of like the martyrs for their cause of like finally where we get to put our feet down and say like, no, this is unacceptable. Yeah. And then single player games continue to just sell good, and they're not making money indefinitely, but like they make good sales and they build good consumer bases. They build good brand loyalty with games. And I'm sure with a game like God of War, you get a lot more repeat customers who will buy the next game day one or pre-order it day one. And I don't know. I feel like it's kind of like they're not thinking about consumer loyalty in a sense, other than people who are loyal to things just because for some reason they're loyal to it. I don't know. Like Anthem, like I literally don't understand how people could like that game.
Yeah, and I think that's what's tough is because I mean I think of like myself, just kind of putting myself in their shoes of like a game that was universally hated that I actually absolutely loved, and I think of Andromeda. Like I really enjoyed playing Andromeda, and I was just thinking about that today where I was like, I could go back and play that. I wonder if part of the issue is that because Andromeda was a one and done in terms of it's a single player experience, like it is what it is. I bought it and I played it and I like it, but like, you're just a loony. Whereas with these other games, you buy it, you play it, and you're obsessive about it, and it's bad, and you are continuing to speak with your wallet that this is okay. I think publishers, it's because even looking at like other content spheres, they tell you like you don't need 100,000 people to be giving you X amount of dollars. You just need that top like 5 or 6% that are rabid. And that's for anything. That's even YouTubers. I've heard that's their experience, or like merch people or whatever. And so I wonder if like, I don't know what the solution is. And I think you kind of alluded to it, but I don't know what the solution is to actually communicate through our wallets, because, you know, kind of like Craig K said, if we're going to start speaking verbally, we just sound nonsensical, because no one as a consumer really truly understands, I think, like what the devs went through, what this is going through. We don't really understand how the game is made. Like we're speaking from like how it plays out. And I think that is insightful if we get a company that is willing to listen. But if I were ever to be in that position, to be frank, knowing the people out there, I don't know that I would ever listen, because some of those people are nuts.
I think based on this discussion, I would personally argue that there's really not a whole lot we can actually do to convince these publishers to change their tune, other than not buying the game. But even then, it's kind of like the argument of voting versus not voting. It's like you're just one person in a pool of people who are doing whatever. And it's kind of, in my mind, I'm kind of the mindset of like, don't hold your favorite thing too close to your chest, because these people are coming for it. Kind of. It's kind of like, look for the good games where they're actually at, and stop hoping and that temper your expectation that these publishers are going to change their tune.
Right.
And it scares me in certain spheres, because Fallout is one of my favorite franchises, and what they did with it in 76 is just baffling to me. And it makes me wary for the next one. Like there's a lot of people on Reddit who are just like, I don't trust Bethesda anymore with their ability to do this. And I think it's kind of hitting that tipping point in my mind, at least, of like, I just need to stop having brand loyalty, because
that's a good point,
because people are like, these publishers are just going to let me down in the end of the day. Like, I need to buy the games that I see that are good. Like Rage 2 is coming out. Borderlands 3 looks amazing based on the gameplay. Like anything CD Projekt Red, like I'll stick with them until they go off into this model. Right. It's kind of like, I'll just like hop around to games that are actually good and are getting rated well and have good stories and good characters and good narrative and basically the things that I enjoy, and stick with that. And in my mind, I've basically just given up in hoping that this is going to go away, because it's not going to go away. It's like the mobile game scene has been doing this for way longer than this has happened. So monetization is not going away, and games as a service are not going away. Right. And hopefully they get better, like Division and stuff like that. It seems like some people are learning the better models on how to do things. So hopefully it continues to improve, but it's definitely not going away. And they're definitely not going to stop taking the things you love and turning them into a shell of what they once were. So
no, that's a good point.
That's my very pessimistic view on this whole thing.
I think you're right. And I don't think even coming into this conversation, I was like, I don't really know that there is a solution. And I think part of me is wondering too that maybe that's what we as consumers need to embrace. And so we either need to curb our expectations, like you were saying, to be like, all right, well, I'm buying a whole bunch. There's a reason there's an N64 and a GameCube sitting on our table here. It's because I have a smattering of games that I love, and they are what they are, and I'm going to enjoy them for what they are, and I will go back and play those and enjoy those. And I think there is that self-preservation I think we have as consumers with whatever it is that we have, you know, that we're afraid of change, and we don't want them to change the thing that we love, and we want them to keep making this thing that we love. But there's a level of like, just let it go, and just either keep loving what you got to experience and just revel in that, or find something new that fulfills that same experience, or move along with the change and embrace it and do that, or shout out the other stuff that you end up finding. Like, I think that's where this has been more fun, as we've been trying to push more towards that like posi vibe model, is me pissing and moaning about what EA does with their money and stuff, as much as it just does not make sense from a distance. You're exactly right. Like, I can't do anything about that. And even me, one consumer in my consumer martyrdom, not buying the next EA game because I'm such a saint. Like, there's all these people talking so big about, like, I'm not giving this person $1. And then they're like, you know, walking in with like hood up and like sunglasses, like, I want to pre-order the next Battlefront. You know, like, they do that. And so to me, it's like, they're going to do what they want and either love the stuff that you got to experience, move on with the stuff that they continue to put out, or find new stuff and love it and tell everyone else to love it. And like, positivity, I think genuinely is what is going to affect
that doesn't
it.
mean you shouldn't critique things.
Exactly.
I think
that's absolutely
screaming and crying
well
on social media in any regard, I don't think
it's just
actually
stupid.
Does anything productive.
Right.
Which is a whole different discussion. But
yeah, that if there was any single discussion that we would get real riled up about, I think that would be
social media and
social
people
media.
using it for their
just like
agendas.
Whining about
Yeah, but I think gamers especially.
Oh boy,
just
don't
every post I'm just seeing like people crying about Epic Game Store, microtransactions, and all this stuff, and I'm just like, dudes, oh gosh. And I mean, it's easy for me to say because I'm not in any of those spheres. Like, I'm not a PC gamer, really. I'm not. I don't play online games, so it's easy for me to sit here and be like, I just won't look for those companies to make good games because I have plenty of other games over here that I enjoy. But I don't know. It's a confusing industry we're in, and I don't know if there is a solution other than to temper your expectations, just buy good games, or just enjoy the games you play. And if it's a bad game, if everybody else says it's a bad game but you think it's fun, enjoy it, have fun, do whatever. Like, basically just play whatever you want to play. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if screaming and crying on social media is gonna change EA's opinion about anything. They're just gonna block you on or whatever. Like,
right, exactly.
So
yeah, no, I think we as consumers, and that's across any platform, need to just kind of accept stuff more. And I think we're in this awful time where everybody's voice can be heard, which is good in some respects, but also very, very, very bad in others, because I think it's created over the past 10 years that it's been around, it's created an entitlement to people listening to us that I don't think people actually genuinely deserve or should be given. And I don't know.
Like, just the amount of people who say that they've gotten death threats over like their favorite thing being ruined, like their favorite book or their favorite video game or their favorite movie, and like creators saying like they're getting death threats over these things. It's just like, this is just nonsense. Like, why are people this rabid about these things? Which again is kind of our posi vibes thing. Like, we want to hopefully shift things more into the posi realm, and we have discussions like this where we get non-posi, but sometimes you gotta take the gloves off.
Yeah, but I think there's something to your point too. You said this a second ago, where like critique is absolutely necessary. Like, things do not improve without critique. However, there's a difference between offering critique and then using it as a bat to be swinging at people, or offering it as a critique to then go do something else as justification. Like, I did not like Anthem and the beta. It was all right. It was enjoyable, but then I started seeing the things and I started seeing the critiques that people made. I'm just going to not care about it.
I'm not going to go on social media and let it go. Rant and rave and tell people they're trash,
like,
and tell people who are playing it they're garbage and they're playing a crappy game. And, and all this stuff. It's just like,
I heard about it. I've made my opinion. I let it go, and I've not cared since until, having this discussion. But I've seen other people who have turned their whole YouTube channel into, now it's just, what is wrong with Anthem and how Anthem is so bad, and it like just that complaining and that griping about how terrible these companies. And it's like, yeah, you're not wrong, but is that really, like, is that all you can do is like be angry? Like, that just seems unhelpful. Like, okay, if games, like, why does the indie game scene exist? It literally exists as a response to games like Anthem and other AAA games that failed fans. And to me, that's kind of why I'm not moving into all indie games, because there's also like hipster indie gamers who just like drive me equally as nuts, where they're like, I don't touch anything that's AAA.
Yeah, some indie game fans are worse than
right. Exactly. It's like they're just as bad. But there's a level of like, go to what you love, and if like people don't like it, like fine, move on. And I think there's a weird validation in fandom that I think people have to have and they want to have and they crave that I don't think is healthy either. And I've fallen into that. Like, in my younger years, I was really ticked off about people not liking Mass Effect 3, and like I was more irritated than I should have been about the Andromeda lashback. But like looking back now, I'm kind of like whatever. It really in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. And even if it's like, well, you doing this thing like makes them think it's okay, it's like we're probably gonna think it was okay anyway. That's why they did it. So yeah, I totally agree with you. I think we just have to enjoy the ride, and it's honestly, it's making me fall in love with other hobbies that I don't think I ever, because there's so much saturation of like games and movies and all this stuff. It's kind of making me be more selective, and in being more selective, I'm finding new excitement in different styles of movies and shows and creative expression that I didn't think I would.
And I mean, even in gaming, it's making me buy games day one that I know that I'm going to enjoy and that I wouldn't normally spend the money on. So like in the past, like a game like Prey, like I know that I would enjoy that kind of game, but I don't want to pay $60 for it just for some reason.
Right.
But now when Rage 2 comes out, I see it and I'm like, this is absolutely the kind of game I'm going to enjoy because it's a similar sort of experience as these other games. And now I'm just like, I'm just going to not buy every game that comes out and buy this one game that I know that I'm going to enjoy, and kind of like finding the things that you actually know you're going to enjoy and reveling in those sorts of things. And I agree, like finding TV shows and books and comics and all this stuff, it kind of opens avenues where you don't need to play every single game that comes out because you're just going to end up playing a lot of crappy games.
Yeah. And there's just no point to me.
Yeah.
Like you're not gaining anything by, the badge of I've played every game ever made doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Back in the 90s, yeah, sure, it did, and you could actually wear that as a badge of honor. But now you're just a maniac if like you're trying to play everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway.
And you got no money.
You ain't got no money, dog. That's what I'm saying. So, but anyway, that is what it is.
Yeah.
I appreciate this discussion because I think it was a fresh perspective and a reminder to me of just enjoy the stuff I enjoy. And like, and I think that's what I've been having more fun is just paying attention to the stuff that's getting me hyped and just kind of like ignoring the griping and the things.
Yeah, I think
if something's bad, I just like, I'm not even going to go into the
I think so
zone.
Many people, especially on social media, for some reason define themselves by the things that they don't like or the things that they hate. Like that's like a cool thing to do nowadays. And I don't get that. I absolutely have done that. Like I've been a punk my whole life. Like I am always thinking about those things. But I think the older I get, the more I realize like there's no purpose to defining yourself by the things you don't like. Mm-hmm. You should just, and I mean, to some extent, there's no purpose in defining yourselves by the things you do like. But at the same time, like if all you're doing is talking about the things you don't like, then what are you even doing? Like, just enjoy the things you do enjoy, and again, doesn't mean you can't critique things. Yep. There's a difference between hating something and critiquing something. Right. I critique plenty of things that I love. So
yeah, definitely, totally agree. Cool. Well, thanks for tuning in and hanging with us on this kind of rambly all over the place episode. Hopefully, it was semi-coherent and semi-enjoyable. We'll see. Just kind of a flash in the pan. You can listen to this episode and any other episodes on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, and Spotify. Also, we really want to thank all of you. This last month in April was the first time we've ever hit 800 downloads in 1 month, which is freaking awesome. Like, that is hype on like a whole nother level. So we really appreciate all of you taking the time to listen to this. And like, we know we're just two random dudes in a side room at my apartment, like doing this. So to think that, all of our stuff over a whole month was downloaded 800 times is like kind of crazy. Insane, yeah. It's kind of crazy. But your work doesn't stop there. We'd love if you guys actually left reviews on any of the platforms that you listen to the show on. That helps us just kind of understand, like what is it about what we're doing that is enjoyable, because we want to make this as good as it can be. We're always kind of every few weeks we're reassessing and going over content and trying to make
Plus
things
the
that
reviews
we think
help boost visibility, I think,
exactly
on platforms. So
yeah, so we'd really appreciate any comments, even if it's like more critical but constructive. I don't care if it's critical and constructive. It just should also be constructive. You know, if you say like, well, I think Josh is probably a giant nerd, like, well, probably not gonna listen to you. So, but whatever. Yeah. So if you could leave a review wherever you're listening, that super helps us out. But again, we just are really thankful and thank you guys for tuning in every week or every other week or whatever your frequency of listening is. It's really cool to see that this thing that we started 3 years ago is like moving at all is pretty awesome.
Yeah, buddy.
You can follow us individually on Twitter and Instagram at I am Phil Sorensen and at JK in Pop Culture. The Pop Culture Punks show Twitter is at Pop Culture Punks, and our Facebook page and Instagram are the same as well. You can send any reviews, comments, insights, critiques, discussions, what have yous to popculturepunks@gmail.com. You can DM us on Twitter, or you can leave a comment on our Instagram. We have a Redbubble and Threadless that's got some merch and all that good stuff if you'd like to support the show financially. And that is the Brohundo Mundo. That's it. So
that's the Brohundo.
That's the Brohundo. Doggy! Dog, we cannot do Thursdays.
Nope.
I don't like Thursdays.
I don't either.
But necessary
This
evil.
was a good episode.
This was.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one to discuss the comic Batman White Knight.
Forgot about that. Let's go.
That's going to be a fun one. I'm
Yeah.
excited. Until then, we bid you a fond cowabunga.
Job security, but I've been dreaming about packing it all up, 'cause the war in me just won't relent till there's nothing left behind.